Hey guys, my name is Maya and I'm a member of Team 4201, the Vitruvian bots. With all the love and feedback that we've gotten from our previous Uplifting Black Voices discussion, we decided to continue the conversation with another dialogue. In this chapter, we tackle more current events such as COVID-19, as well as address some lesser discussed topics. The conversation was inspiring as always, and we hope you guys enjoy. We want to open this part up to the Asian community first. Have you guys ever received any type of hateful, xenophobic, or racist comments during this time of COVID-19?
I personally have never, like, I guess, like experienced anything as drastic as what's in the slide right there. I just, encountered a lot of people like not understanding. There's a lot of like terms like flying around like Chinese like virus and like a lot of like names like that, and people don't really understand why it's a bad thing. I guess people kind of are okay with it, and I tell them that it's really not an acceptable thing to say. Like they don't really understand that, even when I try to explain it to them. But in terms of like directly to my face, there's not been anything as drastic as that.
I just wanted to share, like with COVID and Asian, like I'm Asian, I'm South Asian. The Asian American community, I think, is third to the Black and Latino community in COVID cases in California. Most of our nurses are Asian. A lot of our, especially our Filipino community, are frontline workers. And I also, think that looking at that scale compared to someone who's white, right? Would that happen if most of our nurses in the state were white? Would that happen if most of our essential workers are white? I don't know, and I don't think so. So I just wanted to bring up those 2 points.
I think just to give an optimistic view on this subject matter, I feel like at least we're making some progress in the sense that in schools we're educating like kids that like what's like morally right. The reality of it is that there are people out there who do think they are superior to like other races because of the color of their skin or the position of their job or how much money they have. So I mean, I feel like with this generation going into the future and how we're educating children and kids and young adults to be more open and culturally diverse and respectful of each other. I feel like it's a good trajectory that we're going in.
How do you guys think that we can help combat the racism as a community against the Asian American community during this time and like stand in solidarity with them during this?
I think a lot of people like need to learn and realize that no matter who discrimination is going towards, it's still discrimination. And I think that a lot of people need to realize that just because you're a minority yourself doesn't mean that you can't be racist, you can't have a racial prejudice towards, or you can't be discriminatory towards another minority. So I think a lot of people, a lot of Black people specifically, think that it's just like a one-way street. Like they can be racist to you, but you can't do that to them. But in reality, there are times where you can say something that is racist, or you can have a racial prejudice towards someone that is another minority, but not of the same race as you.
I think as like an Asian American, like a lot of like the stuff that's like been said to me, like it kind of doesn't hurt me anymore because it's been like normalized to the point where it's like it's considered funny. But and like yeah, like, I've heard all of that, like like oh, are you Chinese, or why are your eyes shaped like that, or like are you gonna come and hit me with a bamboo stick? And the fact that people think stuff like that is like acceptable right now, it's like one of those things where we're considered like the privileged minorities, but like they also forget like that we're stereotyped like a lot, and it's like normalized stereotypes, and it gets super annoying sometimes. And just like seeing that our president is like normalizing the stereotypes even more, and like telling people that it's okay to use them, like the kung flu and stuff like that, and not even calling COVID its actual name. It's just really disappointing in general. It's not good to stereotype anybody.
So we're going to move on to our next topic, which is environmental racism. So environmental racism basically is the disproportionate impact of environmental hazards on people of color. How do you guys think environmental racism has affected lower income communities during this time, and anything else that you've known or heard or seen about environmental racism?
But it was surprising for me to learn only this year that 25% of the refineries in all of California are within one district that we have here in Southern California, which is the area that Maya had mentioned before, the Carson, Wilmington, North Long Beach, Compton area. is a concentration of 25% of all the refineries that we have across the great state of California. And that leads to a concentration of pollution, concentration of increase in asthma, cancer, respiratory diseases. And it's I think hits right to the topic of environmental racism, because that's tolerated in that area. Because I don't know if you guys realize that the LA Basin area is an oil field. It's a huge oil field, and there's a lot of money right under our feet.
Nadie sabe dónde vivimos, nadie sabe dónde está Wilmington, nadie sabe ni siquiera que existimos. O sea, están las refinerías, pueden localizar más rápido las refinerías que Wilmington. Todo lo que te puedas imaginar que pueda contaminar a un ser humano está aquí. Este es el lugar cero de contaminación. Quisiera que la gente supiera que no vive aquí en Wilmington, que supiera que nuestra gente se está muriendo, que se pregunten que cuánto cuesta el valor de cada vida, que cuánto cuesta el valor de un ser humano. No hay un balance, no podemos nosotros reportarlos, porque si los reportamos no se puede hacer nada en contra de ellos. Estamos peleando con David y Goliat, ¿verdad?
As you can see, there is only a cinder block fence dividing the homes from the refinery. It is unique here in Wilmington because in such close proximity, in such a small area, and in an area where there is mostly Latino immigrant population who are poor, that these refineries are accumulated. Very close to us are more affluent communities, and you don't see refineries there.
Zoning laws can be changed at the state level. Eminent domain laws can be changed at the state level. No one's just had the political courage to do so. And it is not by accident that Black and brown people are the ones that are only able to afford housing in these areas. And like, you know, and we don't see as many white folks as neighborhood. That is intentional. You know, and also another thing is there's a group called ALEC that writes laws. And literally, like, they're paid by the oil companies. It's a tit for tat. It's a pay to play system. These laws are written, as they said in the video, to protect the refineries, to protect, you know, not protect public lands and all these things. And it's very clear. What I'm saying is very evidence-based. Similarly, redlining laws have also been made, and literally, you know, realtors would say, oh, there's more Black folks in this community, so you know, that's where you shouldn't go, right? This is not an opinion. This is fact-based in the history of America. I truly believe, even with our founding fathers, while we are a nation of immigrants and we started as a nation of hope, fortunately, I don't mean to sound really pessimistic, you know, I believe we have the framework to create the most free country in the world, but unfortunately in our laws, especially in terms of our dependence on oil, seemingly a commitment to environmental racism. Literally, we're committed to environmental racism because we keep doing more and more of it. The water keeps getting worse and worse. We are becoming one of the most racist countries in the world. I think that means that we all need to vote. We need to, you know, expand voting access. And I think you all are young on here. I don't know how many of you can vote, but you know, unfortunately, America has one of the lowest voters turnout.
Adultification bias is a form of racial prejudice where children of minority groups, such as African American girls, are treated as being more mature than they actually are by a reasonable social standard of development.
Recent Georgetown University research shows people view Black girls as young as 5 as more adult-like than white girls, and this adultification could have major consequences on a girl's life. In schools, U.S. Department of Education data shows Black girls are suspended more often than girls of other races, and more often than most boys. And other research shows many of those suspensions are triggered by somewhat subjective acts, like dress code violations. Georgetown researchers also inferred that adultification may also lead to harsher punishments for Black girls in court. Black teens are 9 times likelier than white teens to receive adult prison sentences. One of the researchers told Newsy any person with decision-making authority over a Black girl might be more likely to mete out harsher punishment to a Black girl than a white girl if they're viewing that Black girl as essentially a mature adult who should be held responsible for their actions. And while it's tricky to know exactly what's going on in the minds of jurors, judges, or law enforcement officials, perceptions may affect case outcomes. Cyntoia Brown's case recently popped up on social media, and people are asking a lot of questions about the way it was handled. Brown is a black woman. She's also a victim of sex trafficking, and many wondered if those characteristics played into her sentence. Brown received a life sentence for killing a man when she was 16. She was tried as an adult. Even as a wave of people, including celebrities, call for Brown's freedom, it's unclear what will happen next with her case. But it is clear that for many, the Georgetown researchers' findings are nothing new. The adultification of black girls discussed in the study echoes previous commentary on black girls in our society. Author Monique Morris told The Atlantic, often it's not about what they did, but rather the culture of discipline and punishment that leaves little room for error when one is black and female.
Adultification bias. Me personally, just trying to start off the conversation, I feel like this is something like common in the black community. When you go to the salon and you get your hair pressed, they want to bump your ends, so like curl your ends in, because if you have your hair straight, you look too grown, which is something very weird. I never really questioned it until now. Also, I'm getting a side part when I got my hair pressed because I couldn't get a middle part because I would look older than my age. So I had to get a side part so I look more like a little kid.
I feel like adultification is really normalized, especially in the Weisburn school, because in elementary, I'd always get like sent into the hallway or something for disrupting class if I wanted to add my opinion to the subject at hand. Meanwhile, if my like white counterparts did that, they'd get praised for adding on to the conversation, and it just fly by. Like, it still happens.
So now we're going to move on to our final topic, which is white privilege. That is the inherent advantages possessed by a white person on the basis of their race in a society characterized by racial inequality and injustice. What are some examples of ways that white people can use their white privilege for good?
Earlier in the year, we did, I don't know if it was just ninth grade, but we watched this YouTube video about this race where they had a bunch of people at the starting line and this one guy at the end, and he was like, if you're the first one across the finish line, you get $100. And he started asking questions like, step forward if money wasn't an issue when you like were trying to get to college, or like take a step forward if you never had to worry about your electricity just getting cut out. And it was just shocking to see that lack of diversity in the people who are slowly moving forward. And I just found that really empowering as just ways, and that just kind of got me thinking of ways that I can, make a difference.
People of color have been like oppressed by their race for like a really long time now. And I think as like a white person, the least you could do is like stand with the people of color as opposed to like just like not doing anything, or again, like being like with the white supremacists. I only think like there is no middle line if you're white. If you're neutral, like you're literally just supporting white supremacists because you're letting it happen and you're an enabler and you're part of the issue. That like just admitting that these things happen and that you could have been part of the issue is so imperative to like solving the issue. So I think like being very active in this like time especially is super important to make sure that generations ahead don't have these same issues.
Saying people like to see white privilege as a bad thing, and yes, it does put like minorities at a disadvantage, but I think people need to realize that just because white privilege puts minorities as at a disadvantage doesn't mean that white people can't use that privilege to advocate for others while also not speaking over others.
The first steps is realizing what like white privilege is, and first of all like understanding it before wanting to make like a comment about it, just because I feel like there are so many definitions for it that you can like assume, and I think it's really good to be educated about it. And I think like another important thing is recognizing bias when it comes to reading articles and just being educated about that certain topic, because there are a lot of biased articles when it comes to that. And I think it should be like your decision to make, but at the same time, I feel like you should be educating yourself on something like that and understanding what you can do as a person and what power you can use for that.
I understand that this conversation is directed towards white privilege, and I do agree and acknowledge that white privilege is definitely an issue. but I also wanted to kind of address privilege in general, also among certain minorities. I know myself have taken my privilege for granted, being able to live the way that I do, and kind of taking the heat off of certain minorities that have privileges, people in general that aren't white that have privilege, or at least in my experience, I've seen that they've kind of taken the heat off them and say, oh, well, there's white privilege as well. And I feel like everybody that has a certain amount of privilege should be held accountable for that privilege and help those that are in need, kind of like how everybody else was talking about, how we all don't have the same amount of opportunities, and anyone with privilege should be actively trying to raise other people as well.
I mean, privilege, like a lot of us benefit from, from white privilege or privilege in general. But, and thinking about this topic, like, like a lot of this stuff, like Marina said a little bit earlier, like I never had these conversations when I was younger, right? And it wasn't aware, it wasn't like my world was small, or my world was just different. And so like thinking about us as a community and you students, like we as a robotics team, we value this conversation, and we're dedicating time to this conversation to try to educate you, to show you the power of your vote and your vote, the power of your vote and your voice, and how much of an impact for social justice, social change. And so like looking at this, you guys are privileged. Looking at this, what are our takeaways as a team? And I think the takeaway from this is like so apparent for us. Right now, you guys are a part of a world-class robotics team who in their 10th year has accomplished and has more knowledge, has more money, has more resources than a lot of teams. And very practically, how do we use our privilege? Is we share, right? So inviting people to come over to our field and opening that up is like one way as a team we do that. But then even more specifically, like Shanaz was part of a team that was less privileged than us, and that's why we value that relationship so much, is that we had the ability to kind of share some of our stuff and then hopefully uplift and inspire those students and those individuals. So very practically, a practical takeaway from you being a part of this team is to support another team, is to support other people, is to create relationships with those people, and hopefully inspire and share in the wealth. And that happens like on our team. Those opportunities happen on our team. They also happen outside of our team. I mean, and like Joy has, I don't even know how many teams she mentors. She doesn't even know how many teams she mentors. But these are things that these are gifts, and these are things that you're inheriting from our team that you guys can then also share. And we do share, but maybe now we can be a little bit more conscious about what we're doing and being sure that what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Thank you for that, Sis. That was kind of like a good wrapping up comment. Thank you guys again for checking us out. We want to give a special shout out to everyone from our hometown and First community for coming out to these discussions. Your input is what makes these conversations worthwhile. If you haven't checked out the first chapter of this series, the link will be below in the description, as well as all of our social media to get updates on any and all future events that we do. Thank you guys again. Bye.